The storm didn't whisper that night. It screamed. The wind tore through the trees like it was black clouds that seemed alive, writhing, twisting like wounded spirits. Lightning cracked the heavens open, jagged and violent, throwing ghostly light across the snow-drenched forest floor. And there, staggering through the blood-stained snow, clutching her shoulder, she ran. Lyra. She didn't look back. Not because she didn't want to, but because she knew what she'd see. Him. Her mate. Or, the male who was supposed to be. His voice still echoed through her skull like a curse. You were never mine. The rejection hadn't just broken her heart, it had shattered something deeper. Something sacred. That bond, the one everyone said was unbreakable. It snapped like brittle glass in her chest the moment he stepped back, the moment he looked at her like she was nothing. Less than nothing. And then, he turned his back and let the others come for her. Now the forest closed in, thick and snarling. Branches reached like claws. Thorns tore at her legs. Every step felt like punishment. Her boots, soaked, torn, slid on the blood-slick roots beneath the snow. Her breathing came in gasps, each inhale sharp with the bite of winter. Behind her, growls. Not wolves. Not anymore. Hunters. She could hear them. Smell them. The ones he'd sent. The ones who had once called her sister. One of them had thrown a blade. She didn't see it. Just the flash of metal and then, searing pain as it sliced across her shoulder. Warm blood seeped down her arm, mixing with the snow, turning it a dark, ugly red. She stumbled again, nearly falling face-first into the cold. Her palm hit something hard, stone. She braced herself, eyes wide, wild, searching. The forest wasn't just a maze now, it was a trap. Everything was unfamiliar. Wrong. The snow wasn't soft, it was like ash under her fingers. The trees weren't trees, they leaned in like watchers. Silent. Judging. She forced herself to keep moving, to not cry. Crying would give her away. Crying was weak. But gods, it hurt. Her shoulder throbbed in rhythm with her heartbeat, loud, furious, terrified. She ducked beneath a gnarled root, half frozen, half rotten, and curled her body into the shadows. Her breath came in short, panicked bursts. Steam rose from her lips, a ghost in the night. She pressed her back to the earth and closed her eyes for a heartbeat. 1 second. Just one. But there it was again, that feeling. That low hum beneath her skin. The one she had buried deep, deeper than her shame. The one they told her never to speak of. The one that got her cast out. Marked. Rejected. The power. It stirred. It wasn't loud, but it was present like a whisper at the base of her spine, climbing, curling, threatening to rise. No. Not now. Not here. She pressed her fingers to her chest. But the glow had already started. Faint. Silver. Pulsing. Right over her heart. That damn mark, her so-called curse. Her shame. It flared without her permission. She clutched her side and squeezed her eyes shut. Not now. Not now. Please, not now. Because if they saw it, they wouldn't just hunt her. They'd burn her alive. Her breathing caught. Her heart, once frantic, now pounded in slow, heavy thuds. Each beat like a drum inside her chest. A warning. The snow around her trembled. The roots overhead creaked, like they, too, were holding their breath. She didn't move. Didn't blink. But her mind screamed. Why? Why did he do it? Why would he? A sob tore at her throat. She bit it back, swallowing the sound. He had looked at her with hatred. The male who once smiled at her across the training fields. The one who touched her like she was a secret worth keeping. Who swore the bond meant something. He didn't even flinch when he gave the order. You're not my mate, he said. Whatever you are, it's not natural. She felt something twist in her gut. Not grief. Rage. A rage so deep it felt ancient. Not hers, but something inside her. Something waiting. But rage couldn't keep her warm. It couldn't stitch her wound or silence the howls in the distance. She was alone. Truly, utterly alone. A breath escaped her lips, a tremble of pain, fear, and the ghost of hope. She didn't even know what she was hoping for anymore. Salvation? Revenge? Just one more day? The snow started falling harder, thicker. The wind screamed louder, flinging ice against her skin like tiny knives. She shivered violently. And in that moment, curled beneath dead roots with blood drying on her skin, she realized something awful. He meant to kill her. He didn't just reject her. He wanted her erased. Like she never existed. And worse. He almost succeeded. Almost. Because somewhere, deep inside that broken body, beneath the pain, the blood, the terror, something ancient shifted. A heartbeat that didn't belong to just her anymore. A promise. A whisper. You were never his. And then, footsteps. Not the rushed clatter of hunters. No. These were different. Measured. Controlled. Predatory. She turned her head slowly, painfully, and saw nothing. But she felt him. A presence. A heat that pushed back the cold without touching her. She should have been afraid. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Hide. Fight. But she didn't move. Because whoever was out there, he wasn't part of the hunt. He was something else. And he knew she was here. Her breath hitched. Her fingers curled in the snow. She waited. Then a voice. Low. Velvet dark. Smooth as sin and twice as dangerous. You shouldn't be out here alone. Lyra. Her name, on a stranger's lips. How? Why? Before she could speak, before she could even think, everything inside her stilled. She wasn't alone anymore. And the storm was just beginning. Before the flame consumes her, don't forget to subscribe to author Sloane, where every heartbeat tells a story. The forest held its breath. So did she. Every instinct in Lyra's battered body screamed for stillness. Her blood thundered, her muscles coiled, her fingers flexed against the frozen ground. The snow had muffled the world just seconds before, but now, she heard it. Footsteps. Not the clumsy, furious stomps of the hunters. Not the frantic scramble of wolves on the chase. No. These steps were different. Heavier. Controlled. Every one of them announced presence, not pursuit. Then the mist shifted like it had been waiting for him, and out of that spectral white stepped a shadow cloaked in midnight. A figure, tall and wide-shouldered, moved toward her without hesitation. Not a stumble, not a pause. Like he could see her through the frost, the dark, the branches, the blood. Lyra's breath locked in her throat. He didn't wear a pack crest. No markings. No scent of loyalty or fealty to the territories she knew. But everything about him, his gait, his stillness, the absolute silence that followed him like an obedient dog, screamed dominance. He was Alpha. But not just any Alpha. Something older. Rarer. And then, he stopped. Not 10 feet from her hiding place beneath the roots. The wind should have screamed between them. Instead, it curled around him, quiet and reverent, as though the storm, too, bowed in his presence. He turned his head slowly, eyes scanning the shadows with unsettling precision. And when his gaze landed, when it hit her, Lyra felt it. In her bones. In her mark. Eyes like smoldering coals met hers. And her breath was gone. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. But then, his voice. Low. Rough. Like gravel dragged across silk. Lyra. Her name. Spoken with quiet certainty. Like it belonged to him. She jerked back, pushing her shoulders tighter into the earth. No. No one should know that. No one should see her. Her mouth moved before her fear could stop it. How do you know my name? He tilted his head, studying her. Not answering. Just watching. The way a predator does, not with hunger, but with total awareness. As if she was a puzzle already solved in his mind. She tried to rise, but pain shrieked through her arm and forced her back down. In that second, he moved. 1 step. 2. And then, he was kneeling before her, his shadow swallowing hers whole. Before she could scream, before she could shift or strike or beg. He lifted her. Effortlessly. Like her body weighed nothing. Like the blood, the dirt, the power beneath her skin meant nothing to him. She gasped, fists flailing. Her nails tore at his cloak. "Let me go." But then, she smelled it. Not the scent of her mate. This was different. It wasn't familiar, but it was anchoring. Storm-soaked cedar. Iron. Moonlight and blood. Something primal. Something wild and unclaimed. She froze. He didn't. His arms, strong, calloused, adjusted her carefully. Not tenderly. Not lovingly. But with a kind of ruthless precision, like he was used to carrying burdens far heavier than her. Her breathing hitched. She should run. Should fight. Should shift and tear at his throat. But she didn't. Because her body. Betrayer that it was leaned toward him. Just enough to feel the heat radiating off him in waves. Not just warmth. Not just protection. But power. Ancient, terrifying power. The kind that could level cities. Burn bloodlines. End wars. And yet, he said nothing. Not a threat. Not a promise. Not even a name. He just started walking. Through snow that parted beneath his boots without slowing him. Through trees that seemed to bend away from his shoulders. As if the forest knew him. "Who are you?" she breathed. Her voice cracked. Still, he said nothing. She looked up at him. The angle gave her nothing but his jawline, his clenched throat. Scarred. Hardened. Her fear surged. "I should hate you," she whispered. It wasn't a lie. Whoever he wasn't her savior. He was another Alpha. A threat. A male who knew her name, her face, her scent. One who had found her bleeding and broken and helpless. And yet, he hadn't killed her. He hadn't even asked her who she was. He carried her. Like she mattered. He glanced down then, just once, and met her eyes again. And what he said wasn't soft. It wasn't kind. But gods, it split something open in her chest. "Then hate me later. For now, live." The silence after that sentence was absolute. Because it wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. But not like the others had given her. Not with cruelty or arrogance. This one came from someone who knew what it meant to fight just to breathe. Someone who had carried the weight of choices too heavy to name. And in that single, brutal sentence, Lyra saw it. He understood her. Not in the way her old pack pretended to. Not like the mate who turned his back on her when the truth burned too bright. This stranger. This Alpha. He didn't fear the fire inside her. He expected it. He welcomed it. They moved through the forest, her head leaning faintly against his chest now. Not from trust. No. But from exhaustion. And still, her mark pulsed. Still, his scent wrapped around her like a second skin. And still, her mind screamed questions she didn't dare ask. Who was he? Why did he help her? And most terrifying of all, why did it feel like some part of her already belonged to him? The cave was carved by time, not hands. Jagged stone lined the walls like broken teeth, slick with condensation from the snowmelt that whispered down from above. Shadows flickered from a fire neither of them had lit, because it had always burned there, ancient and blue-white, as if it remembered her kind. She sat still, half-curled on a bed of worn pelts, the warmth seeping into her frozen limbs. Her arm, now bandaged tight, throbbed with a dull ache. But it was nothing compared to the wound inside her chest. He hadn't spoken since they entered. Not a word as he carried her across the ridge, through a trail only he seemed to know, or as he laid her down in this cold, sacred place. Not a question. Not a name. And yet, he had cleaned her wound with a gentleness that didn't match the hard set of his jaw. Now he crouched across from her, near the fire, watching. Always watching. And for the first time in a long, bitter string of days, she let herself remember. Darius. Gods, even the name made her stomach twist. The first time she saw him, she'd been just 16. Barefoot in the moonfield. Skin flushed with the ache of an impending first shift. Heart wide open. Stupid. He was already anointed heir, his aura laced with the silver crest of Alpha Ascension. Every she-wolf in the pack watched him. Wanted him. And when his gaze landed on her, soft, young, breathless, she thought it was fate. They called her the daughter of Myra, third blood of the old line. They thought it was a title. They didn't know it was a warning. The moon choosing fell on the coldest night of that season. The sky was full, too full. The stars hung low and sharp, and even the elders whispered of omens. She stood in the center of the sacred ring, surrounded by every wolf of her pack, bare before the sky. The choosing demanded purity, vulnerability. It demanded you be seen by the goddess. Her bones cracked first. Then her spine. She fell, shaking, sobbing as the change began. But it was late. Too late. The pack shifted in unison, but she remained human. She screamed as fire curled inside her chest, licking toward her throat, her fingertips, her soul. And then it happened. Not the shift. The flare. A silver flame erupted from her palms, painting the altar rocks in ghost light. The wolves stopped. Some growled. One whimpered. Even the alpha stepped back. Darius, already halfway to the center, already prepared to claim her, froze. She remembered his face. That moment. How awe twisted into fear. And how fear turned into disgust. She's cursed, someone whispered. Touched by ruin, said another. And then Darius raised his voice, loud enough for all to hear. I reject her. No explanation. No hesitation. Just that. 3 words, and the earth dropped out from under her. Her mother turned away first. Her father said nothing. The elders met in silence and passed judgment in less than a breath. Exile. Not because of anything she did. But because of what she was. A shifter born of flame. A daughter of blood too old to name. A threat to the order. And now, here. Here she was. Years later. Her body broken. Her heart bitter. Her power still cursed. And a stranger, a male who shouldn't care, had carried her out of death's mouth and set her gently on ancient fur. Why? She looked at him again. He sat there, silent as before. The fire painted golden slashes across his cheekbones, his throat, the edge of a scar beneath his collarbone. He hadn't asked her about the mark on her back. He hadn't demanded she explain the way her wounds had started to knit too fast. But he knew. She could see it in the way he watched her hands. He knew what her kind could do. And still, he stayed. Still, he hadn't left. You should have let me die, she murmured. It wasn't meant to wound. It was just the truth. He shifted then, slowly, like a wolf responding to a sound only he could hear. Still no words. Only a glance. And what she saw in it. Not pity. Not fear. But recognition. Like some part of him, mirrored her. Lyra looked down at her hands. Even now, small glimmers of silver flickered just beneath her skin, like something trying to surface. The flame, her curse, her shame, had never fully left. It slept in her blood, stirred in her bones, whispered in dreams she no longer trusted. Once, she thought it meant she was chosen. Now, she wasn't so sure. I didn't ask for this, she said, almost to herself. A pause. Then his voice again, rougher now, but low. None of us did. She blinked. What? He didn't elaborate. Didn't look away. And that silence, God's, it said so much more than any comfort could have. Because it wasn't sympathy. It was shared weight. As if he carried something too. Maybe not flame. Maybe not exile. But something just as heavy. She leaned back against the stone. Her body still throbbed, but a strange quiet had settled inside her. Not peace. Not safety. But the absence of running. The first time in years she wasn't trying to escape. That, in itself, felt foreign. And terrifying. She thought of Darius again. Of his eyes as they dimmed when he looked at her. Of how they all turned their backs. Of how her power, this damn fire, had never burned anyone but her. And now, this male risked everything by hiding her. Protecting her. Why? Who was he? And what did he want? A log in the fire popped, casting sparks like fireflies against the cave ceiling. She looked up at them, tracking the way the light flickered and danced. And something in her chest whispered, soft but sure. This isn't over. Your story is not done. They left the cave before dawn, moving through a world that still held its breath. The forest beyond the ridge was older than any pack, older than the alphas themselves. Trees leaned close, their trunks gnarled and heavy with moss, their roots like veins crawling across the earth. There were no birds here. No wind. Just the sound of their steps, his sure, hers halting, and the silence of things forgotten. He didn't speak. Neither did she. But she followed. Not because she trusted him. Not yet. But because something in the air had changed. The fire in her blood had gone quiet, as if listening. As if waiting. And the deeper they went, the louder the forest whispered her name. They reached the hollow just as the sky began to lighten. Not with sunrise. With moonlight. The grove lay sunken, encircled by white stone pillars cracked with age, their surfaces crawling with ivy and ancient script. The trees formed a canopy above, not thick, but wide and sweeping. And yet no shadow fell on the clearing. The moon, impossibly full, hung directly above, painting everything in pale silver. It never moved. It never dimmed. Lyra stepped forward, and something in her soul shuddered. As if some tether deep inside her had snapped taut, not pulling her back, but drawing her forward. She crossed into the center. The air thickened around her, tinged with scentless smoke and the copper trace of blood memory. Her breath caught. There on the largest stone near the altar, symbols glowed faintly beneath moss. She stepped closer, brushing it away with her fingertips. And froze. Her fingers trembled. Her knees went weak. Etched into the stone was a mark she had never shown anyone. Not even her mother. The curved flame. The crescent tooth. It matched the birthmark behind her left ear exactly. Her voice came out a whisper, more breath than sound. What is this place? The Alpha King stood at the edge of the grove. He hadn't moved since they arrived. His arms folded, his expression unreadable. And then, slowly, he stepped forward. Only then did she notice the way his gaze softened, not with kindness, but awe. Respect. Reverence. Not for the place. For her. He nodded toward the altar. This is the hollow of ancients, he said. The wolves who walked before us buried their truths here. Not to be worshipped. To be remembered. She traced the mark again, her heartbeat thunderous. Why is my mark here? He didn't answer. But the air did. The wind changed. Sudden. Fierce. Cold. And with it came the visions. They didn't arrive gently. They slammed into her. Her knees buckled, she collapsed against the stone, gasping. The world went white. And then. Fire. Blinding. Alive. Silver. It danced around a woman whose face she couldn't see, but whose presence hurt to witness. Divine. Terrible. Wolves circled her, hundreds. Thousands. Some bowed. Some trembled. Some howled. But none looked away. Behind her, a throne rose from bone and ash. Not carved, but grown from the battlefield. The sky split open. And the moon wept blood. A voice. Not hers. Not his. Something older. Something that had waited. When the alpha moon bleeds, the child of the flame shall return. The throne shall rise again. And the war of packs shall burn to silence. Then. Darkness. She fell back from the stone, choking on air. The alpha was at her side in an instant, gripping her arms, holding her steady. Her eyes darted to his. Wide. Wild. What did I see? She whispered. But she already knew. The words, prophecy, throne, flame circled like wolves around her mind. And all at once, the weight of her exile felt small. What lived in her blood wasn't just power. It was history. Legacy. And now it wanted out. She stared at her hands. No fire danced across them. But the pulse beneath her skin was unmistakable. Ancient. The alpha released her slowly, watching her as if she might break or explode. She felt both. And neither. Her voice shook as she stood. I'm not ready. He didn't answer. Instead, he knelt before her. Not in worship. Not in submission. In recognition. In promise. And somehow, that shook her more than all the visions. She had spent her life hiding. Surviving. Running from the truth buried in her bones. But this male, this rival Alpha King, knelt before her without fear. "You were never meant to be claimed," he said, low and sure. "You were meant to rule." The wind picked up again, carrying a long, distant howl through the trees, not threatening, but mournful. Prophetic. And Lyra, standing in the moonlit hollow with silver fire curling under her skin, knew. Her life had never been hers. Not fully. Not ever. And the real war hadn't even begun. The wind died. Too fast. The silence that followed was wrong, too still, too hollow, like the world itself had gone breathless. Lyra felt it before she heard it. The shift. Not inside her. Around her. The way prey feels the moment before the predator strikes. She turned to the Alpha King, his head already lifted, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the trees. Then. A sound. Low. Serrated. Not a growl. Laughter. It echoed from the trees like something dragged across bone. The grove shattered. Dark figures burst from the woods, their eyes glowing crimson, their forms in half-shift wolf and man twisted together in cruel shapes. Not pack. Not even rogues. Shadowborn. Creatures that answered to no alpha. Creatures that shouldn't exist. Not anymore. They moved fast. Too fast. Lyra was thrown back as the alpha lunged forward, intercepting the first attacker mid-air with a snarl that split the forest in two. His claws met bone. Flesh tore. Blood sprayed silver in the moonlight. But more came. They didn't speak. They didn't hesitate. They came for her. Lyra scrambled to her feet, every nerve screaming, every breath burning in her chest. She felt the power rising. Her silver fire, flaring beneath her ribs, clawing for escape. But she held it back. Too many. Too close. She could kill them. She could kill him too. She'd done it before. Accidentally. When Darius rejected her at the choosing, when the crowd turned, when her fear became rage, her flame had exploded out of her. 4 wolves burned. They survived. But they never looked at her the same. Not even her mother. She wouldn't lose control again. Not now. A roar tore through the grove. The Alpha King went down under 2 shadows, claws raking across his side, but he didn't fall. He flung them off with a surge of raw muscle and fury, his shift rippling through him, fur darkening, fangs lengthening. He was bigger in wolf form than any alpha she'd ever seen. Lean and brutal, born for war. But he was outnumbered. And worse, he was protecting her. Lyra turned to run. But her path was already blocked. A shape stepped from the trees. Broad. Smiling. Familiar. Lyra. She froze. The voice. Darius. Her former mate. Her exile. The first to reject her. The first to fear her. He wore the mark of her old pack on his chest like a brand. Behind him, wolves in black armor emerged, snarling, eyes blazing with zeal. "You've gone too far this time," Darius said, voice low, contempt curling every word. "Running to a rival alpha. Invoking forbidden prophecy. You're not just cursed anymore. You're treason." She backed away, eyes darting between him and the shadows still circling. The Alpha King, her Alpha King, was locked in battle, blooded but unyielding, his gaze flicking toward her even as claws raked across his back. She wanted to run. Wanted to scream. But the fire inside her refused. It pulsed stronger. Hungrier. Darius stepped closer. "Come with me now and I'll speak for you to the council. Lie. Say he forced you. Say it was madness." Her hands clenched. Not out of fear. Out of fury. "You left me to die," she said. He blinked. She took a step forward. "You shamed me. Banished me. Called me cursed in front of my own mother." He straightened, cold slipping into his voice. "And now you want to bring war to all of us?" She stared at him. Then the Alpha King, surrounded, bleeding, still fighting for her. And suddenly, the choice wasn't hard. She didn't run. She raised her hand. And the silver fire answered. The flames erupted from her palm, not wild, not out of control, but focused. Sharper than any blade. They danced up her arm like silk and struck the ground between her and Darius, sending him stumbling back as the earth cracked and sizzled beneath his boots. Gasps echoed from behind him. Even the shadows paused. Lyra stepped through the flame. Unharmed. Alive. More than that, awake. Darius's eyes narrowed. "You've chosen your side then." She said nothing. He looked at the Alpha King, now half collapsed, still snarling through blooded teeth. And smirked. "Let him die for you then." He turned. And vanished into the trees with his wolves. The shadow beasts didn't follow. They dissolved. As if her fire had cleansed them. The grove fell silent again. The moon above didn't flicker. But its light grew colder. Lyra dropped to her knees beside the Alpha King. His breath came ragged, his eyes unfocused. She pressed her palm to his wound. Her flame flickered. Not to burn. To heal. She didn't speak. But he did. Barely a whisper. "I told you, you were meant to rule." She wanted to cry. But she couldn't. Tears were for the old Lyra. The one who begged to be accepted. The one who thought being claimed was all she ever wanted. Now she wanted something bigger. Something bolder. Revenge. Justice. And the truth. But this wasn't over. Not yet. The council would come. The packs would choose sides. And the prophecy would not wait. Night fell slow over the ravaged grove, moonlight sliding through the broken canopy like fingers over bare skin. Shadows curled into the roots, curling around the stone where Lyra sat, still, silent. Watching the man who should have been her enemy breathe unevenly in her arms. The Alpha King. His blood, dark and glistening, soaked through her fingers. But he didn't flinch. Even now, even wounded, he looked at her like she was the threat. Or maybe, the answer. He stirred. A growl slipped low in his throat, not pain. Instinct. Power returning. His eyes opened, slow, heavy-lidded, wolf-amber flickering gold in the firelight. She didn't move. Her hand still hovered near the deepest slash across his ribs, the heat of her silver flame stitching skin where medicine never could. She hadn't even known she could do that. Not without burning. Not without destroying. But with him. It softened. Not weaker. More focused. "You're healing me," he rasped. She nodded. "Don't speak." His lips curled, just slightly. "That an order?" Her jaw tensed. "A request." He closed his eyes again, exhaling through his nose. Not defeated, relieved. As if silence, for once, was mercy. They didn't speak for a long time. Not until the wind shifted. Not until the firelight dimmed. And her hands began to shake. Not from power. From fear. Not of the creatures. Not of Darius. But of herself. He noticed. Of course he did. He always noticed. "You held back," he said, voice quieter now, gentler. "In the grove. You could have wiped them all out. But you didn't." She swallowed. "I was afraid. Of killing them. Of killing you." His gaze snapped to hers. And for a moment, neither of them breathed. Then, his voice, lower. "Why would that scare you?" She blinked, confused by the question. "Because. I don't want to hurt you." His eyes searched hers. Slow. Hungry. Not for flesh. Not for power. For truth. "You don't even know me," he said. "I know enough. That I'm not your mate." She flinched. His words were deliberate. Not cruel. Not cold. Just honest. "I'm not him," he said, quieter. "I know what Darius did to you." "You don't know everything," she whispered. "I know he broke you." "No," she said, voice sharper than she meant. "He tried to." "There's a difference." The fire cracked. The silence returned. Then, "Tell me," he said. She looked up. He nodded. "Tell me what he did. All of it. I'll listen." And so she did. Not all at once. Not with drama. Just fragments. Moments. Like shrapnel buried under skin. The way her mother turned her face when Lyra screamed in the flames of her first shift. The way the elders whispered about her behind the altar, calling her unnatural. The way Darius had claimed her only to reject her hours later when her power flared during the moon choosing. How he smirked while calling her a liability. How he watched her be dragged from the packlands like a prisoner. How no one stopped them. Not even the wolves she'd grown up with. When she finished, he didn't touch her. He didn't say I'm sorry. Instead, he said the one thing no one else ever had. You didn't deserve any of that. Just that. Simple. True. And her walls forged in exile, shame, and silence, cracked just a little more. She looked at him differently now. Not like a stranger. Not like a savior. Like something else. Something dangerous. And safe. All at once. He leaned back against the stone, chest still ragged, but steadier now. His strength was returning, but slowly. Deliberately. Like he chose not to recover too fast. Chose to stay close. To stay vulnerable. With her. She studied the scar along his collarbone. Old. Deep. Where'd that come from? He didn't look down. Brother, he said. My blood one. Thought he deserved the throne more than me. Did he? He shrugged. He thought strength was enough. I thought the pack needed more than muscle. Did you kill him? A pause. No. Why not? He met her eyes again. Because hate eats everything. She went still. She'd been feeding on it for years. Her voice broke. Why are you doing this? He frowned. Doing what? Helping me. Protecting me. Listening to me. The fire cast shadows across his face, softening the harsh angles. You think I know, he said. His voice was dry. But there was no mockery in it. Only truth. I saw you once, he murmured. Long before the choosing. You were shifting in the forest outside the old river trail. I knew what you were then. Knew you were dangerous. She blinked. You watched me. I watched over you. There's a difference. She looked away. Not because it made her uncomfortable. Because it made her feel too much. And that was worse. She stood slowly, wrapping her arms around herself as the cold returned, curling into her bones like doubt. He watched her. I'll leave by morning, she said. No. She stiffened. I wasn't asking permission. I'm not giving orders, he said, pushing himself upright. I'm telling you the truth. You won't make it alone. And you shouldn't have to. Her lips parted, but no words came. I can't promise safety, he added. I can't even promise loyalty from my own people. Then what can you promise? He stepped close. Close enough that his heat touched her skin. His breath warm on her throat. His eyes soft, but burning. I see you, he said. All of you. Even the parts you hide. Especially those. The space between them cracked. The air charged. Not just with power. With possibility. Her breath hitched. They stood like that, so close, not touching until the fire died to embers. And the silence between them said everything their mouths couldn't yet risk. Dawn bled red over the ridge. Like a warning. Or a wound. Lyra stood at the edge of the clearing, wind tugging at her cloak, her breath visible in the morning chill. Behind her, the Alpha King's people gathered. Silent. Watching. She didn't want their eyes. She didn't want their judgment. But they gave both freely. The whispers had started before sunrise. She's the Flameborn. The cursed girl. The one from the exile line. The prophecy was never meant for her. And then, the elders arrived. From 3 packs. Ritual robes. Gold-threaded authority. Their eyes were colder than steel, and twice as sharp. One of them, the high voice, a man with a voice like splintered bone, raised his arm. Bring her forward. The Alpha King stepped between them. She stands with me. But the high voice only smiled. Oh, she stands, does she? Let her explain this then. He snapped his fingers. And the boy appeared. Barely 15. Terrified. Holding something wrapped in torn cloth. Blood on his hands. No one spoke as the boy unwrapped the bundle. Inside, charred bones. A hunter's seal. And a ribbon from Lyra's cloak. She was seen near the elder grove. After the fire. It wasn't her, the Alpha King said. But the high voice didn't even turn to him. He looked only at Lyra. "Speak, witch." The word cut deeper than it should have. She'd heard worse. But not here. Not after everything. "I didn't kill anyone," she said. The elders didn't react. One of them, a woman with braids of silver and a gaze that could curdle milk, sniffed the air. "She carries the fire. You all feel it. Smell it." "I control it now," Lyra said, louder. "It doesn't control me." But even she didn't believe the full weight of those words. That's when Darius stepped from the crowd. Alive. Smiling. His beater mark gleaming, newly carved on his arm. "Tell them, Lyra," he said. "Tell them what you did the night of the choosing. The fire. The deaths. The reason you were exiled." She froze. He stepped closer, past the Alpha King. "Tell them you begged me to claim you. Tell them what you are." The air shattered with growls. The Alpha King moved. But Lyra stopped him. With one raised hand. She turned to Darius, her voice steady. "I never begged." "No," he purred. "You screamed my name like a prayer. Because I was burning alive, and you left me." His face twitched. "But then," he smirked. "I had no idea it would follow you here. Your curse. Your destruction." He turned to the crowd. "Now she wants to drag us all into her flames." The elders moved forward. "The girl must be sealed," the high voice said. "Bound by iron. Until the next moon, when we can strip her of her shift. Before she brings ruin." The Alpha King bared his teeth. "You'll have to go through me. And then." He hesitated. Just long enough. Just enough to feel like betrayal. Lyra felt it in her gut. The flicker in his eyes. The doubt. He was calculating. Weighing diplomacy. Weighing her. And in that instant everything in her unraveled. Not because he stepped back. He didn't. But because he thought about it. Her chest tightened. The silver flame stirred beneath her skin. Hot. Furious. Not wild. Righteous. "You said you saw me," she said, voice like cracked ice. "All of me." He flinched. "I do." "No," she said, stepping back. "You saw what you wanted to believe. Not what I am." He reached for her. She pulled away. And the world tilted. Light exploded from her chest. Silver fire. The crowd screamed. The elders fell back. Darius stumbled, shielding his face. Only the Alpha King stood his ground. Watching her, not with fear. But with something worse. Pity. That broke her. She turned, wolf eyes flashing, her voice no longer her own. "You don't get to fear me now." The ground split beneath her feet. The fire erupted skyward. Symbols carved into the trees burned silver. The prophecy pulsed in the air around her like thunder. She was the child of the flame. But not their savior. Not their curse. Not theirs at all. And as she vanished into the trees. Burning. Broken. Alive. The only sound behind her was the echo of the Alpha King's voice. Not calling her back. Just whispering her name. The forest burned silver in her wake. Not with fire. Not with destruction. But with something older. Wilder. A resurrection. The wind shifted as Lyra ran, not away from them, not anymore, but toward something ancient that stirred beneath her feet. Her bare soles kissed roots soaked in prophecy. Her skin shimmered with sweat, ash, and the magic she once feared. No longer hunted. No longer waiting. She was the storm now. The hollow behind her had become a cage. And the Alpha King had watched the door close without lifting a hand. Let him rot in his silence. Let them all. She wasn't running from exile now. She was running toward her reckoning. The path twisted as if the forest bent around her will. Branches parted. Rocks slid aside. And there, between two black stone pillars older than any living wolf, the earth opened into the Heartfire Cavern. The place from her visions. Where wolves once bowed to fire. Where the first seer burned alive and rose again. She stepped inside. The air thick with forgotten whispers. No footprints. No signs of life. Only a circle of stone, and in its center, a pool. Still. Black as ink. Silent as death. She dropped to her knees. Fingers trembling. Eyes fixed on her reflection. But it wasn't her. Not exactly. The woman in the water had the same eyes, but silver now, glowing. Hair wild and curling with ash. A line of flame curling from her collarbone down past her heart. A mark. Not a scar. A crown. She leaned closer, and the water spoke. No voice. No words. Just knowing. You were never meant to be claimed. You were born to claim. Behind her, the trees howled. And the scent of blood hit her throat like iron. She rose slowly. The ground shuddered. The pool hissed, then roared. And flames surged up, licking her limbs, folding around her shoulders like wings. They did not burn her. They belonged to her. She stepped into the clearing. Back into moonlight. Back into battle. The packs had gathered near the altar stones. Ritual fires burned red and gold. But the air was wrong. Too still. Too quiet. Until the scream split the night. A mother. Somewhere near the east ridge. Then a howl, jagged. Not wolf. Not quite. Shadow beasts. Twisted forms surged from the woods. Creatures of corrupted magic, once wolves mangled by forbidden shifting. Their eyes glowed sickly green, their fangs longer than reason. And at their center, Darius. Dripping with stolen power. Twisted by a rite he'd sworn never to touch. He didn't see Lyra at first. Not until the flames parted. And then, his smile cracked. You came back, he spat. She didn't answer. Her silver fire responded for her, a blast that lit the treetops, sending ash and wind spiraling around her like armor. The Alpha King stood between the beasts and his people. Outnumbered. Bleeding from the shoulder. Eyes locked on her. This time, no hesitation. Only hope. I knew you'd return. She met his gaze. I didn't come for you, she said. And then. She stepped into the fire. Wolves scattered. Shadow beasts charged. Lyra raised her hands and the earth listened. Roots snapped upward, coiling around limbs. Light burst from her throat in a howl that made even the elders drop to their knees. It wasn't rage. It wasn't vengeance. It was claiming. Of power. Of identity. Of truth. She moved like no wolf had before. Half shifted. Half divine. Not a monster. Not a miracle. Just herself. The girl who had once begged for love. Now wielding fire that bent to no one's will but her own. The Alpha King fought beside her. Their movements synced, not through training, but instinct. He shielded her back. She cleared his path. Two forces, one storm. The beasts fell. One by one. Until only Darius remained. He was panting. Eyes wild. Flames had scorched half his face. Still, he laughed. You'll burn us all. Lyra stepped forward. Her voice like thunder. No. You did that when you made me your enemy. He lunged. But her flame met him midair. No scream. No final word. Just a crack of power, a gust of wind. And silence. When the smoke cleared, nothing remained but his beater mark, blackened and split. The Alpha King knelt. His chest heaving. And Lyra. Lyra didn't fall. She stood above the pack, their eyes wide with awe, fear, and something else. Something unfamiliar. Respect. She turned her back to them. To him. To all of it. They thought it was over. But as she walked toward the trees, the ground beneath her trembled. The altar stones cracked. And a voice older than any living soul echoed from the shadows. She is not the only one. The flames died down. But the silence that followed was louder than war. Lyra stood alone at the edge of the blooded grove, where wolves had once danced beneath moonlight. Now, ash blanketed the altar stones. Shadows curled around roots, whispering names the world had long forgotten. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The pack stared from a distance, not daring to step closer. Not even the Alpha King. Especially not him. Because she had changed. And not in the way they feared. In the way they couldn't understand. She walked past them, slow and deliberate. Past the healer who once turned her away. Past the elder who called her cursed. Past the warriors who'd never learned to look her in the eye. Each heartbeat was a vow. Each breath, a reckoning. Her silver mark glowed like a sun beneath her skin, no longer hidden, no longer shamed. And still, no one followed. The forest swallowed her whole. The only sound, her footsteps. Then the wind whispered again, not cruel this time, but curious. Would you have chosen her, or feared her too? Would you have looked at the girl trembling in exile and seen a queen? Would you have heard her howl and called it sacred? Would you have believed in the fire inside her, or tried to snuff it out before it ever caught light? They didn't. Not when it mattered. And now they watch her walk away and call it strength. But they weren't there when she begged the moon to take her. They didn't see her clutch her chest at night, whispering, "Why wasn't I enough?" They only see the aftermath. Never the burning. She once loved a mate who said, "You were never mine." Now she belongs to no one. And yet, somewhere, deep inside, a flicker, a question. Will anyone ever see her not as a weapon, but as a woman? Would you? Is she a hero, or just a girl cursed with too much fire? Is she chosen, or simply the only one who survived the choosing? Before her next step lights the forest ablaze. Subscribe to author Sloane. Because here, we tell stories that burn, love that scars, and women who rise from ashes queens and men that rise from zero to heroes. The forest closed behind her like a secret. Mist coiled around her ankles. The moon hung low, heavy and red. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, not in grief, not in victory, but in warning. Lyra didn't stop walking. Not when the cold bit her skin. Not when the last of the flames flickered out behind her. She had no need for warmth now. She was the fire. But something in the wind shifted. A scent. Old. Metallic. Familiar in the way rot remembers life. She turned her head slightly. Eyes narrowed. The trees ahead grew darker. Taller. Bent beneath a weight the rest of the forest did not share. And then, a whisper. So quiet, it might have been memory. So sharp, it might have been truth. She is not the only one. Lyra stilled. Her fingers flexed at her sides. The silver mark beneath her collarbone pulsed once, faint, but sharp, like a blade drawn under the skin. She scanned the shadows, lips parting. "Who's there?" she demanded. No reply. Only breath on the wind. And a second whisper. "The true Alpha hasn't risen, yet." Then silence. But the kind that waits. The kind that watches. The kind that knows. Lyra exhaled slowly. Not in fear. In understanding. The war she'd fought tonight, the rejection, the betrayal, the blood, it had never been the final test. It was only the opening chapter. The flame had woken. And it had called others. Behind her, the packs would rebuild. They would whisper her name, half in awe, half in dread. They would speak of the girl with fire in her veins and prophecy at her heels. But none would guess what stirred beneath the forest. What clawed its way out of shadow with teeth and names older than any bloodline. And none of them were ready. Lyra turned her eyes to the blackened horizon. A storm gathered there. Not the kind she could outrun. Not this time. But this time, she wouldn't run. She would rise. Subscribe to author Sloane now, and be the first to witness what rises next. Because the Alpha Moon has bled. And this world will never be the same again.